Hey guys, thanks for joining us again today. As we look at Wednesday's reading, we went from 2 Samuel 13 all the way to 2 Samuel 15. A lot of craziness went on. We'll talk about in a second. But before we do, I wanted to let you guys know of the new thing that we're trying to do, just trying to stay connected with all of you. So about once a week or so, we're going to do these conversations with Pastor Eric or live chat or whatever. So today it's going to be at 3 o'clock. On Facebook as well as on Instagram. I'm just going to get on and just talk. Try to answer any biblical questions you guys have. I'll share a little bit of my heart about what we're going through as a nation and as a world and all that. But just wanted to get together and just talk. So I'll be doing the talking, unfortunately, but I'll have you guys comment both on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll address a lot of the comments. So please join us today at 3 o'clock. All right, well, today we are in 2 Samuel chapter 13 through 15. Now, if you already read it, you know that chapter 13 is it's a crazy chapter. In it, we see incest, we see lust, we see rape, we see the effects of sin on just a love relationship. In this, we find two main characters, Amnon and Tamar, both of who are children of the king. Tamar, daughter of the king, Amnon, son of the king. Now, they have different moms, which already we see an issue with David's many wives that he has. But Amnon looks at Tamar, and it says that he loves her. Now, we know the love that he has. It was a fleshly love. So his cousin comes up, and they come up with this idea of how he can get Tamar alone with Amnon, so he pretends to be sick. Already, we see that this whole thing is just wrong. Incestuous, one, built on lies, two, motivated by lust, three. I mean, all of these things are not a good standard for a relationship. So he lures Tamar into his bedroom, and there, once all the servants are gone, he grabs her, and then he rapes her. Now, it says something interesting in verse 15. After he does, it says, "Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, 'Arise and be gone.'" We see when we do things the way that the flesh or the devil would want us to do things, the end result is death, right? And so right here, he goes from these feelings of love, which are really infatuation and lust. And when his craving is met, now the subject of the lust becomes the subject of his hatred. It's so different than the sacrificial love that Christ has called us to in relationships. That when we can lay down our rights for the sake of somebody else, demonstrate our love for them by the sacrifices that we make for them, just as Jesus did for us. He demonstrated his love for us while he hung upon the cross, which we remember again this Good Friday. But we see the whole thing is messed up. To make matters worse, when news gets back to David, again, the dad of both of these individuals, this is what it says in verse 21, again, of 2 Samuel 13. "But when King David heard all these things, he was very angry." That's it. No actions taken, no discipline, no comfort showed to Tamar, no discipline showed to Amnon. He just sat there and he was angry. You see, David was a great king. David was a great leader. He was a great shepherd. He did many mighty things for the Lord, but he was a really crummy dad. He was distant, he wasn't active in the home, and when his children did something wrong, he just sat there idly by, reacted in anger, but didn't do anything at all. And in contrast to that, when his son Absalom hears of what happens, Absalom loves Tamar. In fact, he names his only daughter after her. So he loves her very much, and when he hears what Amnon did to her, Absalom takes action. Unlike his dad, he comes up with a 2-year-long plan of revenge. And then we see that plan is enacted the rest of the chapter. He kills Amnon, or at least he has his servants kill him, and then he has to flee to Geshur by the end of the chapter. Then we get into chapter 14, where Absalom returns to Jerusalem because David's general Joab, he comes up with this little plan to get David's heart to soften, and it works. So he comes back to Jerusalem. That's essentially chapter 14. Then we get to chapter 15, and we see that Absalom, the whole time, was just being conniving. He's planning. And after 4 years of being back, Absalom comes up with a plan to steal the people's affection from his dad, David. So it tells us in chapter 15, starting in verse 4, moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me. Then I would give him justice." Now go on ahead to verse 6, the bottom part. It says, "So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel." David, at this point, is kind of mailing in his responsibilities. He's just sitting idly by in the palace. Absalom goes to the gate of the city of Jerusalem. And there, every time someone comes to bring something to the king, he stops them and he judges for them. And then he says, "Oh, if only I were in charge. This is the sort of treatment you would get." And we see slowly that the hearts of the people begin to move towards Absalom and away from the true king, the rightful king, David. Now, to make Absalom's plan even stronger, notice what it says in chapter 15, verse 12. "Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor." Why do we bring that up? Because Ahithophel is the grandfather of Bathsheba. Now you remember just a couple chapters earlier in chapter 11, what did David do? David seduced and slept with Bathsheba. After being warned by his guards, said, no, not her, right? He knew exactly who she was. And so we see Ahithophel waits, and now he gets his revenge. How? He gets his revenge by allying himself with David's son, who is now David's new enemy. And so he gets to show David that he hates him, that he is against him, and now he is fully in another camp. Once again, we see the sin of David. Yes, he was forgiven, but consequences continue from previous sins that we have committed. Now, there's a fortunate turn for David as the chapter closes. He has to escape from Jerusalem in fear of his son. He's seen already how ruthless Absalom can be, and so he escapes. But the fortunate thing that we see, David still is a man after God's own heart. Although he's not doing a good job as being a dad, although he has fallen in sin, we see he's still a godly man. Notice what it says in chapter 15, verse 32. "Now it happened when David had come to the top of the mountain." That's after he has fled, he has left his empire, left his kingdom, he has seen that his children hate him or don't respect him at all. Now he leaves, and notice what it says right afterwards. "Where he worshipped God." David escapes. He's had everything taken away from him, and yet he still has cause to worship. We're going to pause on that for a second. Right now, there's a lot of people that are struggling. People are scared. They're scared of what this virus can do to them, to their loved ones, to our nation. Other people aren't necessarily scared, but now they're dealing with economic loss. They've lost a job recently, or they're not sure if they're gonna lose a job. They're seeing the money in their bank account drop. They're nervous. They're scared. Others have literally had everything taken away from them, and they don't know what to do. They're lost. They're helpless, and they're hopeless. Listen, if you're a believer, like David, even though you've had everything taken away from you, even though you've recently lost a son, even though your children are against you, even though you've had an entire kingdom stripped from you, you still have cause to worship God. David did. And I would say David is going through much more than almost any of us could possibly go through. To have a family divided, to have a kingdom stripped from you, essentially a career lost by your own son who has gone behind your back. And yet David stops, and he has cause for worship. One other bright spot in David's life is that David, again, many mistakes, right? But some of the positives in David's life is he has very faithful friends. And so as David escapes, he has a handful of people who go with him, and he says to those people, to some of those people, go back to the kingdom. Go back to the kingdom. He says to Abiathar the priest, go back to the kingdom, right? And he says to his two sons, go back to the kingdom. Well, then at the end of the chapter, we see one of his other advisors, who was the counterpart to Ahithophel. His name is Hushai. David says to Hushai, go back to the kingdom. And Hushai doesn't want to go. He goes, no, you need to go, because when you go, you can thwart the plan of Ahithophel. He knows that Ahithophel is a very wise man. He knows that his counsel is good counsel. And so he knows that he doesn't have much of a chance against Absalom if Ahithophel is there. So he convinces Hushai to go back. Now notice what it says in the last verse of our reading today. It says in verse 37, so Hushai, notice this, David's friend, went into the city. And we see that Hushai, in tomorrow's reading, we'll see that he actually goes against the plans of Ahithophel. And we see Ahithophel actually has a picture of Judas, which we could talk about tomorrow. But we see the reason Hushai did it is because he was a faithful friend. I want to encourage you, if you have lost a lot, if you are scared, if you are nervous, if you are worried, whatever you're going through negatively, I want to encourage you to lean on your godly friends. That's what David did. And we see that the Lord very practically used his godly friends to bring about victory ultimately in David's life. That he restores so much back to David through the ministry of a faithful friend. So I want to encourage you, lean on your faithful friends. I also want to encourage you to be a faithful friend for people to lean on. All right, guys, God bless you. Hope that you were blessed again by the Devo. Don't forget today, 3 o'clock, Facebook, as well as Instagram. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. If you have any Bible questions, be a great time to bring those. If you have any encouragement that you want to share those on the comments. I'm really looking forward to our time together at 3. All right, God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.